tenants in our own country. These are not my words. These are words says by PM Mia Motley from Barbados. And somebody says, tenants in our own country is a real threat. It is happening in other countries. Some parts of Africa and Jamaica are at risk. They better be careful. They are bad fellas, And this one is saying about the leaders. Now, I agree with the comment about Barbados education. There was a comment that was made, about Barbados being ranked as number 2 in the Caribbean and 23rd on the world stage. They have a strong economy. Barbados also has a strong economy. And Mia Motley, compared to many world leaders, she supersedes them all. These are leaders like Trump, name them all these super power leaders. It's clear that she pays attention to the changes in our time. No wonder many are afraid of female leaders, and I will add, especially from the Caribbean, many people are afraid of leaders, female leaders, especially that are from the Caribbean. And this has been proven through Mia Motley, who is fearless, and these leaders, they don't want to face people that talks about the real issue that affects humanity. So this person continues to say that my hearts are off to her. My hearts are off to her, and we need world-class leaders like her. May God bless her. Now, guys, let's talk into one of the most influential speech. Hey, so what's up, guys? Welcome and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is MC Kajambi, coming right away from Africa, Kenya, and you can also call me the Kenyan guy that loves Jamaica. Let's get into today's speech.
For international travel to help save the planet, so that the people who benefit and whose children and grandchildren will benefit feel that they too are making a difference in the effort to save the world. And if you took it to pharmaceuticals and the pandemic, you would expect them to put their part. And if you took it to digital illiteracy, you would expect those companies that now have market capitalizations in the trillions of dollars to leave a little something on the table so that we can secure. We're not going to make all the SDGs by 2030, but we must now prioritize to build the bridges that will unlock the rest. And that must mean fighting hunger and poverty. That must mean providing education across the world. That must mean ensuring that we have the technical capacity to unfold the benefit of renewable energy while at the same time creating the opportunities for green investment, because foreign capital alone will only make us tenants in our own land, and therefore the domestic resource mobilization and the aggregation of capital is necessary to balance the equation so our own citizens do not become tenants in their own land. I say these things because I genuinely believe that in the same way we saw over centuries the evolution of the joint stock company, in the same way we saw over centuries the emergence of the nation state, in the same way that we recognize that this is the beginning of the end of a current world order, that we have to be prepared to recognize and to determine what are the things that are necessary to secure lives and livelihoods, people and planet, without being wed to systems that are no longer working for us and that were made in the image of people who only want to dominate and exploit. That is the spirit of Michael Manley and the word of love being practiced. But coming with those rights now come responsibilities, because there is no right that can exist forever without a responsibility to tend to the things. A house, this building, you leave it unchecked and unattended for, and it starts to fall. You leave your body unattended for, it atrophies. And we as a region have a duty to have mature conversations, first to begin to understand how we can reclaim the mental landscape of our own citizens, recognizing, as I did in a CARICOM Ministers of Culture meeting as a young senator in this country 33, 34 years ago, that we will never be able to stop information from flowing in unless we close down our society. And it's not practical. So that what we must do is root our people, so that when the gale force winds start to blow, the trees may bend, but they will not break. The roots are complex, And the educational system needs to be transformed to ensure, as difficult as it is, and believe you me, as I go through this process in Barbados, I know it is difficult. Because nobody wants to feel as though they are on the front line of change, particularly when the change may have implications for their own household. But in the same way that a person who is a diabetic recognizes that if I don't make that decision to sacrifice a toe, I may make the foot or the leg, or worse than that, the body through sepsis at risk. We as a region need to understand that the price of freedom is also equally the anchoring of responsibility in this Caribbean region. I say to you today that when all of that is combined, we still have to come back home to the most basic and elemental of truths. That you and you and you and you and you and me have first always to summon the courage and to look in the mirror and to believe, as Errol Barrow said in our mirror image, to believe, as Marcus Garvey said, that it is critical that we emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And we forge the strength and courage to develop the confidence, not just simply to say that no man is better than me and I am not better than any man, because our people now accept that. And that in truth and in fact, we are in the throes of an inflection point, a historic movement that really, today, causes us to have to pause. And the danger is that we might be at risk of being distracted from the fundamental things that truly make a difference to our planet and to our people, and by extension to our Caribbean civilization. The reality is that what we are witnessing, in my view, is really the dying of an old order without yet seeing where the new order will be located and how it will be framed. The Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci wrote in his famous prison notebooks, and I quote, "The old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters," unquote. And what are those monsters today? Is it the climate crisis? I don't refer to it as climate change because there's nothing about change in the crisis that we face. It is a season of superlatives, and it's the season of the unexpected. We see it from the droughts, to the floods, to the hurricanes, to the sargassum seaweed, to so many other things that are so unrealistic. I'm accustomed to convection rain here in Kingston, not in Bridgetown. For the last 2 years, we experienced that from August to December, almost 5 days a week. While at the same time, for the first 6 months of last year, we had less than 50% rainfall of the average 30 years that went before in the same year. The monsters are the pandemics. And we acknowledge that with the increased heat, we are likely to see new pathogens develop, and by extension, new pandemics are likely to emerge. But even as we speak, separate from that, our abuse of antibiotics, antimicrobials, has led to an extraordinary level of antimicrobial resistance that now makes that responsible for the third highest number of deaths directly and indirectly in the world, and by 2050 it shall be responsible for the highest volume of deaths in the world, reversing a century of medical progress and making simple things like going to the dentist or going in the garden or having a baby risky things if you get an infection. We have seen environmental degradation generally, but in particular degradation of our soils. And there is the belief that it will considerably impact the oil. And at the same time, globally, we have 35 million people, refugees across the world, fleeing wars, violence, persecution, and abject poverty, right here in our own region to across the world. The world itself is a dangerous place to be. The 1st of December, France had a government, as did Syria. Today, the 10th of December, both have been gone for a few days. One by law and one by force. We are at an interesting point. We hear of the movement against incumbents more than anything else. Some of it expresses itself in right-wing populism, some of it in the UK, left of centre. But in both instances, it's an anti-incumbent move, largely because much of what people have had to experience in this polycrisis moment in the last 5 years has made life difficult for most and perplexing for all. The spectacle of fake news and the inability to control a narrative to build a nation, where broadcasting used to be the order of the day and now narrowcasting and echo chambers replace it. We, more than ever, to determine what does love look like in this, the third decade of the 21st century. And because time limits me, I'll just address a few matters. One, regional integration and foreign policy. Two, as it relates to the reform of the international financial system and by extension our capacity to meet the global public goods that are critical for our survival on the planet as people. And finally, the utter and absolute importance as Caribbean people of the psychological reinforcement of our cultural identity to give us purpose and to give us unity and solidarity to weather these difficult times as the New World Order finds itself emerging. May not be for a few decades, maybe as soon as the next 5-10 years. And it is slow upon us when all of a sudden, as we saw in Syria, it is immediately upon us. And that is the nature of the world in which we live today, where the powers that influence and the information that is generated goes way beyond the nation state. And to that extent, on this day of International Human Rights Day, one asks yourself, what will that new world order look like? And what will truly be the power of nation states? Will small states be able to survive without deep functional cooperation and pooling? Or will they become collateral victims as the world seeks to line up behind great powers yet again? Particularly if the multilateral rules-based system that we have is not allowed to work for us.